Hello, this is Sonia from An Enthusiastic Reader. This video is going to be all about the best books I read in 2024. And then after I talk about the books I read that I really remember and am so glad I read, I also wanted to reevaluate some of the goals that I had, or the resolutions that I had set in 2024. They were my reading resolutions. I'd like to talk a little bit about what they were and if I was able to achieve any of them, and also mention a few things I'd like to change for 2025. The first books I'd like to talk about are backlisted books, books that were not recently published, and in many cases were published many, many years ago. So my favorite backlisted books are as follows. I loved Bleak House by Charles Dickens. This is the story of a lawsuit in a family that has been going on for decades, and how the promise, for at least some of the characters, the promise of a fortune at the end of the lawsuit has ruined many lives, and it ruins the life of a young person who is so looking forward to achieving his fortune through the lawsuit that he is completely unable to achieve any other career. And he tries many careers and just is so wrapped up in the lawsuit that he cannot achieve any success in any other endeavor. And that's just one subplot of many, many, many characters, and it was just so intricate. I loved the way that Dickens talked about these characters and developed the relationships, and also included, history of the law in England. So that was a great success. I did a buddy read with Priscilla from Evening Reader, and we read 3 Kent Harif novels, the Plainsong trilogy. They all take place in the same small town in Colorado and are marginally connected to one another, not exactly. And I guess my favorite of the 3 is Plainsong, which is the first in the trilogy. And I really, really loved it. I loved the characters. There are some bachelor brothers who take in a pregnant young woman who's still in high school because her mother kicks her out, and they nurture this girl. And that's just one of the scenarios in the book. There are several different groups of characters who are struggling with loneliness and mental illness and poverty, and just trying to figure out how they fit into the world. And I loved that book, and it was one of the highlights of the year for me. Another book that I read that I really enjoyed is The Feast by Margaret Kennedy. This was written in the 1950s and covers a small English village where there is a guest house, a kind of an inn that is located at the bottom of a cliff. And at the very beginning of the book, a great rock slide comes and smashes the house, and you know that at least one, if not more, people have died. And then we kind of do a flashback and meet all of the characters of the people who were either living or staying in the house as guests, and the dynamics between all of them. And Kennedy was trying to talk about the seven deadly sins, and so each character represents one of the seven deadly sins. That's hard to say. And so it was humorous, and it was also had a lot of weird kids, and it had some weird characters, and it was funny and really poignant, and I completely loved it. Another book that's kind of similar in a way, maybe it's funny and also sad, but not probably quite as madcap, is The Beautiful Visit by Elizabeth Jane Howard. And this is the story of a girl who, I'm trying to remember the scenario. They're incredibly poor, and she is sent away for a vacation to live with some distant relatives for this vacation, and she has such a wonderful time that visit changes the entire trajectory of her life, what she wants out of her life, what she's willing to do to get out of the situation she's in her family. And it's a coming of age story. It's just beautiful. And Elizabeth Jane Howard really knew how to write women of this particular class and circumstance. And I just absolutely love this book. And finally, the last book that are backlisted books that I read was a reread for me, Olive Again by Elizabeth Strout. This is the story of Olive after the events of the first book, Olive Kittredge, and it's all about her second marriage and other people in the town where they live. It was a lot different than I remembered it. It was a lot more tender. Olive comes across in this second book of hers as a lot more poignant and willing to grow and willing to change than she seemed to be in the first collection of short stories about her life. So I'm absolutely, I'm going to say that every time, but I really enjoyed my reread of Olive Again. Okay, now I'd like to talk about books that came out either in 2023 or 2024. I didn't, all of the books from 2023 I didn't get to, or they weren't published until very early in the year, so I'd like to talk about those. Unsurprising to anyone, one of the top reads that I read from 2024 is James by Percival Everett. I listened to the audiobook that was narrated by Dominic Hoffman, and this is, as you by now know and maybe even are tired of hearing explained to you, is a retelling of Huckleberry Finn. You do not need to have read Huckleberry Finn to get the depth of the story. It might be an added bonus, but I did not read Huckleberry Finn, but I knew enough about it, and I feel like it seeped into me through the culture that I didn't need to read it. And I just thought it was great. This is powerful. It's an indictment of the slavery system, humanizing and making us think of the slave James as somebody who had a very rich interior life and voice, his own jokes, his own ethics, and his ability to code switch back and forth depending on who he's talking to. It's funny, it's absurd, sometimes it's grotesque, and it was just a great book. I have a couple of nonfiction books that fit into my best books of 2024, and the first one is Thunderclap, a memoir of art and life and sudden death by Laura Cumming. Her father was an artist, a visual artist, and she has written this memoir of being the daughter of a visual artist, kind of her awareness of art and the seeing eye and how it affected her memory. And then she also talks historically, there were gunpowder barrels in the basement of a building, and one explodes, and then there are a series of explosions, and many people were killed. This was in Amsterdam, and including a very famous artist. He wasn't famous at the time, but he became famous, and what that explosion meant to the world of art, and there were just so many things that were woven into the narrative that I highly recommend it. And the other, it's called Cocktails with George and Martha, Movies, Marriage, and the Making of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Philip Gefter. And this was so good. I loved it. It was all about how the play Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf was written by Edward Albee. It has a little bit of his life history and the progression of the plays that he wrote, and how popular this play became, and how it was cast and who was in it, and how it changed from paper to the drama, and then how it got made into a movie with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton, and how their alcoholism and just celebrity affected the filming of the movie, and how it changed from the drama. And just like there was just so many very rich anecdotes about just the whole inception of this play from beginning to end, and the awards it won, and how it affected all of the people who were part of the production. I, surprise, enjoyed it very much. There was a great novel that was written about a young woman who gets pregnant by her college professor called Margot's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe. And this had a lot of humor. It had great character relationships. And what happens to this character is that she is in desperate need of money. Her father has been a promoter of wrestling, and he hasn't really been present in her life, but he's down on his luck a little bit, and he needs to be with family. So he comes to live with her after the baby's born. And so you get to see their relationship develop, and she figuring out savvy ways of using the internet to make money so that she can raise her baby. And so she's using the website OnlyFans, and is doing suggestive photography, and also trying to be more creative than that. And she gets close to one of the clients who is paying her to make these videos. So anyway, I just really like the spirit of it. It wasn't like a noir, and it wasn't downhearted. It was actually quite upbeat and fun, and you really got to know the characters. I also loved Long Island by Colm Tobin. This is the sequel to his first novel, to the first novel in the series called Brooklyn, that was written, I think, in 2013. And it follows the main character as she has gotten married and has a big rift in her marriage and decides to go back to Ireland to visit her mother and figure out what she's going to do about this thing that happens in her marriage. And so while she's there, she reignites some old relationships and tries to deal with her mother. And you get to see all of the characters that live in the town. And so it's just a reawakening of that. What was captured so well in Brooklyn is also, I think, matched in the sequel, Long Island. Another Irish novel that I absolutely loved is The Wren by Anne Enright. This is the story of a family where the patriarch of the family is a famous Irish poet and an alcoholic, not a particularly good father or grandfather. And then it's about his daughter and her sister and then her daughter. So it's three generations, all dealing with things like climate change comes up and the instability of modern life. And interwoven into the novel is the poetry that the patriarch has written and has been very famous for. And he has written a poem about his daughter that has the line, the wren in it. And this poetry that was in the novel was written by the author Anne Enright's friend, who is a poet. So it's very beautiful poetry. So it feels really authentic. And I've watched some interviews with her after the fact, and it just really, that novel has stuck with me. And it's a little unconventional, and it's probably not for everyone, but I really loved the way that the story gets told about these people in the family. And finally, another Irish novel is The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue. This is a story of a friendship and a romance, and it takes place during the Great Recession of 2008 in Ireland, when the main character's father is having a lot of financial problems, and she is still in school, and it's a comedy for sure. It's a comedy of errors, misunderstandings, and romance and friendship. And it was, to me, just one of the best books I read in 2024. Very early. I think I read it in January, and it stuck with me too. So these are my top books of 2024. I read a lot of other books. I am into Anthony Trollope now. It's my Anthony Trollope era now, and I will be continuing that into 2025. And I read a number of other good books too. So I feel it was a pretty successful reading year. I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the resolutions I had in 2024 and if I was able to live up to them. One of my resolutions last year was to stop requesting so many advanced review copies from NetGalley, and I did do that. I think I requested 5. I read all of them, and all of the titles I requested were books I definitely was interested in and wanted to read. So I didn't take any chances with books because I just wasn't in the mind space to take chances with my reading, and I wanted to make sure I fulfilled my commitment to reading those books, and so that was very successful. Another resolution I had was for my book club books, use audiobooks if I could to help me get through some of them, because I don't always love my book club books Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. This was hit or miss for me. I did listen to some of them and that did help, but others I did not. Third resolution was always have a book going that's just for me, and I feel like I did do that. I was reading some really good books alongside all my buddy reads and book club reads, and I was always reading something that I was really enjoying. And stop obsessing over unread books, and I think I did this halfway, and I definitely want to keep going with that because I created another spreadsheet. I was keeping track, and then just about a couple of weeks ago, I was thinking about it. It's like, this is not serving me in any way to create a spreadsheet of books that I've read when I'm already keeping track of books on GoodReads. This is silly. I'm just wasting time. But I had another idea. And what I'm doing now is I have an iPad and I had an app on there called, I think it's called Day One, and it's a journaling app. And so I resurrected that app, the purchase that I made, and I paid the fee for the year. And when you pay the fee, you get to have as many journals about different topics as you want. And there are all kinds of different ways to format them and everything. And what I decided to do was create a reading notes journal where I am keeping notes about things I'm reading as I'm reading them. And I really like the way it's organized because the most recent entry is at the top of the list that's on the side. And so I can always take notes about a particular book in a particular entry, and then as I'm finished, they will, shuffle down the screen. But I do have a record of my thoughts about the books instead of just taking notes on, say, for instance, on a Kindle with my finger, and then I have all these notes, but that I've highlighted, but that doesn't help me to remember as well as actually making some notes in a journal. So, and I can do that journal with other things as well. So I'm going to be trying journaling this year and just see where that gets me. Now, I've had lots of empty notebooks, and my handwriting isn't very good, and I don't have fun when I'm writing a journal, but I think maybe this is my answer, is doing a digital journal. DNF after 50 pages if I'm not enjoying it. I DNF so many books this year, and so that was very much a success for me. And the last very unsuccessful resolution I had last year was to do more Friday Reads videos. I did not do that for various reasons. I just did not want to make videos as often as I had wished I would. So my reading resolutions for 2025 are to abandon my spreadsheets and just do journaling. I already talked about that. I'm going to keep enjoying reading with other people, and this leads me to some of my plans that I have for 2025. I'm going to be doing the Wolf Crawl, which is a slow read of all three of the Hilary Mantel Wolf Hall books. With a group of people it's called Tangents and Footnotes. And I think Renee from Left-Handed Reader has done this before. And she also did the War and Peace, reading one chapter a day of War and Peace for the entire year, because there are just about 360 chapters in War and Peace. And I am definitely going to do those two things. I am all set to participate in those group reads. And also Angelia from Read and Rereads has set up a Discord where she is reading plays. She will be kind of leading people reading plays over the year, and I am definitely going to participate in some of those. I don't think I'll do all of them, but I am excited to read some plays with this fun group, and I don't really understand Discord very well, but I'm gonna power through. So those are some of the plans that I have for 2025 in reading. So please, if you would like, tell me what your favorite books were that you read this year in the comments. And if you have anything else to say, I'd love to hear it. And I just want to thank you for sticking with me and watching my videos this year, even though they were sporadic. And I hope for all of us that we have an okay 2025. And please be well and safe. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.